We're recording?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Hello,
everyone.
What I'm gonna do to sync the two.
Oh, now hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody. There's another episode of From the Soul Out of the Ass, or
Arse,
as you like to call it.
as it's called.
In this country, I guess. I have to get used to that.
Aluminium.
Anyway, this is gonna be the first of a series of episodes we're going to do on ancient philosophy.
Yes.
Because we are, surprise, surprise, taking a course in ancient philosophy, and, well, we thought it would be instructive to work through some of the ideas. And hopefully we will have, in future episodes, have guests along the way from our class come and discuss so we can get a wide range of ideas. But we'll do our best today to cover the wide spectrum of opinions and consider all perspectives in this particular case.
In short, this is going to be us being incredibly confused about ancient Greek philosophy and trying to get our head around it.
You may be very confused. No, I'm going to be confused too. But, truth is never easy, nor are knowledge, so we have to enter into the muddy parts.
Sure. Well, let's start with some of the basics we covered yesterday in class, namely about the material that we're going to be using, because a lot of the pre-Socratic philosophy, so pre-Socrates, there is next to no actual material surviving from that time, and what we're working off, and what all philosophers nowadays, ancient philosophers of ancient literature, are working off of, are fragments, or what was the other one? Testimonials. So fragments being sections of their writing that have either been memorized and written down by other philosophers, or surviving fragments of their work that have been sort of copied. And these have all been through translations and interpretations, so there are, all of this is up for debate.
Well, but the fragments are their own words.
Yes, yeah. But the interpretation of the fragments are, because these are all been translated and interpreted. Right. So there's lots of, there's a couple of examples even just here where there's 2 or 3 different interpretations of one fragment.
Meaning there's no right answer.
Yeah, so this is, hence the confusion. And then the testimonials are people after the time of these philosophers giving an account of what those philosophers were talking about in their own writing, either using it as a citation or talking about, historians like Plutarch and whatnot, making other ancient philosophers talking about other ancient philosophers and giving a description of what they're up to in their own work. Because apparently it was quite a close-knit community. They all knew, because they all come from roughly the same kind of time, roughly the same kind of place. They all knew what each other were up to.
I think,
or were very familiar with what each other were up to, I should say.
Right. I think just because it's helpful to make this quick point is when we say with the testimonials, people after the fact describing what that person has said or wrote. We're talking about not immediately after, but people like Aristotle and, still ancients talking about ancients, or Romans talking about Greeks.
Yeah. Or medievals talking about Greeks.
Yes. Although I don't know of any particular examples where we have medieval accounts of the Greeks.
No, but she did mention it in...
She did?
She did mention it in class. No. Teacher's pet here.
Okay. Anyway, we're going to be talking today about Parmenides of Elea. The Eleans were a school of ancient Greek philosophers, kind of were founded by Parmenides. And I think he's often attributed as having a monistic view of the world, so that the world is made out of one thing. I don't necessarily agree that that's what he's saying, but that's kind of what the school has been known for.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, because in opposition to a dualist account of the world, there being two things that make up the world.
Like Descartes' spirit and material kind of thing.
Yeah, but Descartes didn't think that those were the... Well, maybe. I don't know.
Just as an example of,
Yeah.
of dualism.
Or somebody who might say that, fire and water make up everything. Again, I'm only saying that because that's kind of the Wikipedia version. Although maybe Wikipedia is more sophisticated. I don't know. But anyway.
I doubt it.
Right. So it's more complicated than that. And Parmenides doesn't explicitly say that
the world's made out of one thing.
Right. So we are going to be talking about just Parmenides, as I said, and particularly one particular fragment that is the longest fragment that we have of any pre-Socratic philosopher. And what this fragment is about is essentially what is the correct way of
thinking about the world.
Thinking about the world. Right. He kind of posits that there's two paths. And
it's presented as well as an experience he has with a goddess.
With a goddess.
So what I think we should do before we get to, because I take it you're meaning point 8 you're referring to. What I think we should do is I think we should start with the first one, because it's like a reading of it, because it is that description of that experience of that him going to the goddess, and she details those two paths in this section.
Okay.
And then we can. So I think if you can read it if you want, or I can give it a read, and we can
switch off.
Sure.
I'll do point 1. You can do 2 to 7. I'll do point 8.
Go for it.
And we'll put this in the video that will be up on Spotify and YouTube, as per usual, so you can follow along. All right. The Mars which carried me as far as my spirit ever aspired were escorting me when they brought me and proceeded along the renowned route of the goddess, which brings the knowing mortal to all cities one by one. On this route I was being brought. On it wise Mars were bringing me, straining the chariot, and maidens were guiding the way. The axle in the center of the wheel was shrilling forth the bright sound of a music pipe, ablaze, for it was being driven forward by 2 rounded wheels at either end. As the daughters of the sun were hastening to escort me, after leaving the house of night for the light, having pushed back the veils from their heads with their hands. There are the gates of the roads of night and day, and a lintel and a stone threshold contain them. High in the sky they are filled by huge doors, of which avenging justice holds the keys that fit them. The maidens beguiled her with soft words, and skillfully persuaded her to push back the bar for them, quickly from the gates. They made a gaping gap of the doors when they opened them, swinging in turn in their sockets the bronze posts fastened with bolts and rivets. There, straight through them, then the maidens held a chariot and horses on the broad road, and the goddess received me kindly, took my right hand in hers, and addressed me with these words, "Young man, accompanied by immortal charioteers, who reach my house by the horses which bring you. Welcome, since it was not an evil destiny that sent you forth to travel this route. For indeed, it is far from the beaten path of humans, but right and justice. There is need for you to learn all things, both the unshaken heart of persuasive truth and the opinions of mortals, in which there is no true reliance." It's a very arrogant way of putting it. "But nevertheless, you will learn these two, that it is right that the objects of opinion genuinely are being always indeed all things."
This is the second fragment.
Mm-hmm.
"But come now, I will tell you, and you, when you have heard the story, bring it away, about those routes of investigation that are the only ones to be thought of, the one both that is, and that it is not the case that is not. This is the path of persuasion, for it accompanies truth. The other, both that is not, and that is not is right. This, indeed, I declare to you to be a track entirely unable to be investigated. For you cannot know what is not, for it cannot be accomplished, nor can you declare it. Third, for the same thing both can be thought of and can be. An alternative translation for this is, for thinking and being are the same, and a third alternative translation, the same thing is for thinking and for being. Fourth fragment, but gaze upon things which, although absent, are securely present to the mind, for you will not cut off what is from clinging to what is, neither being scattered everywhere in every way in order, nor being brought together. Fifth fragment, for me it is different where I am to begin from, for that is where I will arrive back again. Sixth fragment, it is right both to say and to think that it is what is, for it is the case that it is. But nothing is not. These things I bid you to ponder. For this is the first route of investigation from which I hold you back, and then from that one on which mortals, knowing nothing, wander two-headed, for helplessness in their breasts steers their wandering mind. They are borne along, deaf and blind alike, dazed hordes without judgment, by whom it, namely what is thought both to be and not to be the same and not the same, but the path of all is backward turning. Number 7. For in no way may this ever be defeated, so that things that are not are, but you hold your thought back from this route of investigation, and do not let habit, rich in experience, compel you along this route, to direct an aimless eye and an echoing ear and tongue, but judge by reason the much contested examination spoken by me.
Keep going.
Number 8. This is the biggie.
No. Maybe we should pause.
Yes, yeah, because that kind of introduces the two paths, and I think quite an important quote by Parmenides, that, but judge by reason the much contested examination spoken by me. Because I think one of the, maybe we'll get onto this, I think one of the well-known things about Parmenides was his introduction of deductive reasoning.
Right.
Which I think is in point 8. I think that happens.
Right. Really, what these first 7 fragments have done is they've set the scene for him to tell us about these two routes of investigation, as he calls it.
Sure.
2 methods of thinking about.
Right, and just to clarify where those are. So that was in the second fragment, so I'll just read again, just so it's clear. But now come, I will tell you, and you, when you have heard the story, bring it away about those routes of investigation that are the only ones to be thought of. The first one, both that is, and that it is not the case that is not, is the path of persuasion, for it accompanies truth. And the other, the second route of thinking, both that is not, and that is not is right, This indeed I declare to you to be a track entirely unable to be investigated, for you cannot know what is not, for it cannot be accomplished, nor can you declare it. So I think just to kind of put that out in a statement is there is no way to positively give an account of what is not.
Yeah, because it is nothing.
Yeah, you can't. What's that old way of saying it? You can't prove a negative.
Right. Basically, what is not does not have any properties.
Yes, because it's nothing. Describe nothing, as we were talking about yesterday. And then the other way is the first one is a description of what is. It's to give a positive account of things because it has properties, because it has ways in which it can be described.
Right. So 8 is going to give us an account of what it means to be.
Yes.
Is.
And the second one, the arrogant goddess, as you put it, is attributed that to what the goddess is saying that's what mortals do, or Parmenides is saying that the goddess said that's what mortals do. The second route.
The one ill-advised.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. My voice is a little touchy,
sure, yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind reading 8, that would be
sure. If you want to stop at any point while I'm doing this, just to cover anything, we can. Or I'll read the whole thing through.
Touch on parts afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Just one story of a route is still left. Is. On this route, there are signs, very many, that what is ungenerated and imperishable, whole, unique, steadfast, and complete. Nor was it ever, nor will it be, since it is not, nor was it ever, nor will it be, since it is now altogether one, holding together. For what birth will you investigate for it? How and from what did it grow? I will allow you neither to say nor to think. From what is not, for is not to be said or thought of. What need would have roused it, later or earlier, to grow, having begun from nothing? In this way it is right, either fully to be or not. Nor will the force of conviction ever impel anything to come to be beside it from what is not. Excuse me. For this reason, neither coming to be nor perishing did justice allow, loosening her shackles, but she, justice, holds it. And the decision about these things is in this: is or is not, and it has been decided, as is necessary, to leave the first route, unthought of and unnamed, for it is not a real route, the second route, so that the other route is and is genuine. But how can what is be hereafter? How can it come to be? For if it came to be, it is not even if it is something going to be. Thus generation has been extinguished, and perishing cannot be investigated. Nor is it divisible, since it is all alike, and not at all more in any respect which would keep it from holding together, or at all inferior, but it is all full of what is. Therefore, it is all holding together, for what is draws near to what is, but motionless in the limits of great bonds it is, without starting or ceasing, since generation and perishing have wandered far, far away. True conviction repelled them. Remaining the same, and in the same and by itself it lies, and so remains there fixed, for mighty necessity holds it in bonds of a limit which holds it back on all sides. For this reason it is right for what is to be not incomplete, for it is not lacking, otherwise what is would be in want of everything. What is to be thought of is the same as that on account of which the thought is. For not without what is, in which it depends having been solemnly pronounced, you will find thinking, for nothing else either is or will be except what is, since precisely this is what fate shackled to be whole and motionless. Therefore it has been named all things that mortals, persuaded that they are real, have posited both to be generated and to perish, to be and not, and to change place and alter bright colour. But since the limit is ultimate, It, namely what is complete from all directions, like the bulk of a well-rounded sphere, equally matched from the middle on all sides. For it is right for it to be not in any way greater or any lesser than in another. For neither is it the case that what is not is, which would stop it from reaching the same, nor is there any way in which what is would be in one way more than what is, and in another way less, since it is all inviolable. For equal to itself from all directions, it meets uniformly with its limits. At this point, I want you to know, I end my reliable account and thought about truth. From here on, learn mortal opinions, listening to the deceitful order of my words, for they established two forms to name in their judgments, of which it is not right to name. In this they have gone astray, and they distinguish things opposite in body and establish signs apart from one another. For one, the ethereal fire of flame, mild, very light, the same as itself in every direction, but not the same as the other. But that other one in itself is opposite, dark night, a dense and heavy body. I declare to you all the ordering as it appears, so that no mortal judgment may overtake you. And that's the end of 11.8.
All right.
See confusion.
I'll just say that if you've already read it, you can skip that part. Go till now. Okay. I think what we should start with is I think it's prudent to take it in order, because he does make there's a logical order to where he goes. So when you look at lines 1 to 4, or 1 to 5, really, what you have is essentially properties that he is listing as what is.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, what is so ungenerated, imperishable, whole, unique, steadfast, and complete. So just, to repeat that, what he's saying is what is, which is what, I think we should leave the question of what is, this is going to sound very redundant, leave the question of what is, later. We're going to leave it ambiguous for now.
Right. As to the is as what that is.
Yeah.
And what's being referred to when is
Either
being...
does it exist? Is it a metaphysical? Anyway. So, but that is ungenerated, imperishable, whole, unique, steadfast, and complete.
Mm-hmm.
Got that? Nor was it ever, nor will it be, since it is now all together. One holding together. So, meaning, it was never, nor was it ever, I take to mean in the past. It was not, it did not exist in the past, and it did not, or it was not in the past, and it was not in the future, because it is now.
Okay.
All together. So, all together, one holding together. So essentially, I think what he's trying to say here is it cannot be in the past, because that means it is no longer now, and it cannot be in the future, because that also means that in the future, that in present it is not.
So you're saying that all that is in its imperishable form is always now, never before, and never after. But doesn't that also at the same time make it eternal? If
Well, I think
if it's always now,
I think you have to. You can't think about it in terms of like. At point A, it will be, and therefore at point B it can. Therefore, at point B, it like doesn't exist,
right?
Or essentially that it doesn't. It's not possible that if at point A it is, at point B it is. I think what he's trying to say is, in the space of time, it's not possible that something exists but then does not exist. That's the past. And it's not possible that something doesn't exist but then exists at a future moment.
Right, because he asks, for what birth will you investigate for it? How and from what did it grow?
Right.
I will allow you neither to say nor to think.
Right. So those are his properties, right? So then he kind of starts his argument for why these are the case.
Sure.
So from 6 to 9, he says, how and from what did it grow? I will allow you neither to say nor to think from what is not, for is not, to be said or thought of. What need would have roused it, later or earlier, to grow, having begun from nothing? So this is kind of what we just touched on previously. The idea that you can't, if something is, it can't then be nothing. And if something is nothing, it can't then turn into something. Or what is. Does that make sense?
I mean, no, but
I mean, just the
so that's what he's trying to describe.
Right. The idea that if you take something that does not exist, it can't then
become something.
And if you take something,
right,
it can't then become what does not exist.
I see. So that which exists is eternal in that it exists, though it may change form and shift. But that which is there is always there.
Right.
And that which isn't can never come to be something. Only that which is something is and maintains itself as something, never becomes nothing.
Right.
Okay, yep, see that.
And then he kind of goes on to say, what need would have roused it later or earlier to grow, having begun from nothing? In this way, it is right either fully to be or not. Right? This is kind of him continuing this, saying, so if you take that first part saying it can't generate from anything, and if it can't generate,
you can't
right, what I mean is it can't generate something from nothing.
Right.
That's essentially what it's saying. Cannot.
Yes.
And so if you can't generate something from nothing, then it follows, according to him, that you can't have something have had a past where it was not and have a future where it was not.
Okay.
That's his thing. So then in line 11 to we'll see where it goes. From this reason, nor will the force of conviction ever impel anything to come to be beside it from what is not. For this reason, neither coming to be nor perishing did justice allow, loosening her shackles, but she holds it, and the decision about these things is this.
Is in this,
Is or is not, and it has been decided as is necessary to leave the one root unthought of and unnamed, so that the other root is and is genuine. Okay, I think of this first part, for this reason, neither coming to be nor perishing did justice allow. This is saying if something is, it cannot perish.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this kind of ties into it cannot be in the future, because it cannot be in the present and then later no longer be.
Right. It doesn't. How I.
Oh, sorry, that's the past. Sorry, it cannot be in the past and then now no longer be.
I see. Okay. All right. Fair enough. That makes better sense.
Um,
I'm doing a much better job with this than I am, by the way.
and the decision about these things is in this, is or is not, and it has been decided as is necessary to leave the one root unthought of and unnamed, so that the other root is and is genuine. I think here he's just reinforcing his overall point, which is kind of the conclusion of what he's...
The second fragment, which was the one root being the right way of thinking and the other way being the wrong way of thinking.
Right, and then essentially kind of when he says the decision about these things is in this, is or is not, and has been decided as necessary to leave the one unthought of and an unnamed, meaning the things that are not cannot be thought of and should not be named because they have no properties.
Right, but he's referring to the root here. That's what it's in that brackets.
Right.
So, but I think he's not referring to the things in this statement. He's referring to the root of thinking about things. I think that's how I read that when I was reading out, because I added because in square brackets in this segment it's added in root. So I think he's referring to.
But see, when he says just one story of a root is still left, I take that to mean that the root is, and that the other root is not.
I see.
Because I think that makes sense when he says it's
right,
unthought of and unnamed. Because it wouldn't make sense if he was talking about the one that mortals go, because unthought of and unnamed.
Yeah, so yes, he's referring to the second root of thinking that was referred to in the second fragment, and then this one.
But I'm saying it wouldn't make sense for him to say that.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Sorry. Carry on what you saying.
I was going to say, if he's saying the decision about these things is in this, is or is not, and has been decided as is necessary to leave the one. I think he's talking about is or is not here, unthought of and unnamed, for this is not a real root, so that the other root is and is genuine. I don't think he's talking about the two paths of perception here. I think he's talking about what is and what is not. Because in the beginning he says just one story.
But those are the two roots. Those are the two parts of thinking about reality, or thinking about.
Well, I took the mortal path to be the one that says that things can be, is, and they can be, is not. And his claim is that is not what is the case.
Okay, let's go back and read the two roots again, because just to clarify. I mean, we can argue about this, or so. Second fragment. But come now, I will tell you, and you, Parmenides, when you have heard the story, bring it away, about those roots of investigation that are the only ones to be thought of. The one, so the first, both that is, and that it is not the case that is not.
Right.
So that's negating the claims of making a negative claim. Right, so you can only make a positive claim is the first root.
Right.
Right, and the other. The first root is the path of persuasion, for it accompanies truth. So this is the is, right? So that's
Right.
the is, and it is not the case that is not. And the second root, the other, both that is not and that is not is right. This indeed I declare to you to be a track entirely unable to be investigated, for you cannot know what is not, for it cannot be accomplished, nor can you declare it. So if we go back over here, sorry, where were we? And it's been so as is necessary to leave the one root unthought of and unnamed, for it is not a real root. I took that to be the second of those two.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that the other root, referring to the first one, is and is genuine. Yeah, is and is genuine. Okay. Well, so we're agreeing on that.
Right. The one that is genuine is the one that is.
Yes, and the unthought of and unnamed one is the is not, and is not is right.
Right. Is the one that's
Fuck you, Parmenides.
The one that is unnamed and unthought of.
Yep.
For it is not a real root, is the one that says that is not and is can be the same, can coexist. Right?
No.
Right.
So the sex. So
that both is not and that is not is right.
Right. So, but the is not. Sorry, you can't see this. So the is not. So this is in quotes, right? And so both that is not in quotes, and that quote is not in its own quotes, and then within that quote is right. So that is right is referring to the is not. So the claim of is not. So I took that to be making negative claims.
Right.
Right. And then the is not is right. So to say that making negative claims is right. So that's not.
Okay, you're right.
So that's not saying is and is not at the same time.
It's saying that
to make a negative claim and to say that making a negative claim is the right way of thinking about the word.
Yes.
And that one's shit. Don't do that one.
That's the unnamed and ungenuine.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think that's where we're getting. I think we were.
Because. Right, because as you said, there's that word right again. And we're using a lot of the same jargon, so it's getting complicated. But as you said, the track that says that to say that is not is right is wrong. And my interpretation of this is to say, is he's kind of saying his whole thing about what it is to think of has to be what is, because you cannot think of what is not.
Right.
Because it has
there's nothing to think about. There's nothing to describe. There's nothing to take to pieces.
Right.
Or
and then so when he says those who pursue the wrong path are the ones that say that is not is right.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that is wrong is because his diagnosis is that they think that is not still has, that they think they can still think of is not, I guess, because what he's saying is they don't recognize that is not has no properties.
Right.
That they think that they can describe is not, presumably because they attribute some kind of properties to what is not.
Which you can't.
That's the reason they think it is right. But he's saying it has no properties and it has nothing, so it is not right.
Sure, because he says, for what birth will you investigate for it? Right. What beginning did it? What beginning did nothing have? Right. This is the point about the properties, right? How and from what did it grow? Right. Because there's nothing to say about is not, right?
Right.
What did is not come from? What is not? What did it grow out of? Right. he says, I will allow you neither to say nor think, nor to think. From what is not, for is not. Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair.
We agree with that?
Sure.
That's okay. One attempt to kind of simplify this. The bad root ascribes that what is not, meaning the negation of some things, can have properties, or can exist, or can be thought of. And the correct way is to recognize that you can only think of or conceive or what has properties is what is.
Mm-hmm.
And that what is not has none of those, and therefore cannot be thought of, cannot be conceived, and does not have properties.
Right. Because the goddess, I think, later on instructs him, right towards the end, or whatever it was, to think about to use reason to think about what she describes. But what she's describing is positive. So she's saying you can only use your reason to think about what is.
Right.
You cannot use your reason to think about what is not because it's impossible.
Right. Okay. Good. Hopefully that makes some semblance of sense. I'm following the Parmenides tradition of using words that stem from the same thing in repetition to confuse
everyone.
The hell out of everybody. Anyway, let's continue.
Go for it.
But how can what is be hereafter? How can it come to be? For if it came to be, it is not. For if it came to be, it is not even if it is sometime going to be. Thus generation has been extinguished, and perishing cannot be investigated. Okay, so there, I think we're kind of continuing among the same themes that we have touched upon,
sure.
Which is essentially, it can't have, wait 1 second.
Sorry.
It can't have come to be because that implies that it was not at some point, and therefore, and it cannot later no longer be, perish, right? Extinguish and perish are, it cannot be, and then at a later point no longer be.
Okay, so he's saying things that are, so things that exist, they cannot become, and they cannot cease to exist. That which exists always.
Right.
And it always existed, it exists now, and will always exist. It can't become, and it can't perish.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Because he says, if it came to be, it is not. So if it came to be what is, then it must have been what is not.
Prior to.
And if it perishes and becomes at some point what it, and if it perishes, then that means at some point it is going to be what is not. And that can't happen because that's
the second root, and that's they're making
right. But as he argues, his logic for saying those two things are, what is not is nothing. And you can't have something from nothing. And you can't have something turn into nothing. Essentially, that's what he's saying.
Yeah. I just want to pause here for a second, because I have a couple of my biases popping up in my head. Because what we didn't say at the beginning is that this is coming out of the ancient Greek tradition, where the presence of gods, theology, spirituality were very present in thinking about the worlds, even those who were turning their attention to thinking rationally and with reason. And so for those who might be listening who, like myself, have maybe hearing some of these claims about how things exist or not existing, and maybe thinking, well, that sounds like bullshit. It sounds like a lot of these claims. I'm not going to call them bullshit, but a lot of the descriptions of how the world works are going to sound weird and strange to us today. For those listening who might not be in an academic context, because I think we have some listeners who aren't necessarily in.
Hi, Mom. I'm just kidding.
I know. My mum isn't listening.
No.
So yeah, so for anyone who's listening to this and thinking, Jesus Christ, that sounds nuts, or this is really hard to follow, stick with it, right? Like these.
Yeah, I'll just say that I'm inclined to interpret it in a way that gives the benefit of the doubt to the author, maybe because I'm part Greek and I'm rooting for the Greeks, maybe because I'm an optimistic person, but I'll just say that my interpretation is, and as we've said, there's a lot of ways to interpret it.
Sure, yeah.
My interpretation is going to be one that gives the author the benefit of the doubt.
Sure, that wasn't a denigration, by the way. I wasn't.
No. I didn't mean. I didn't. It wasn't a response to a denigration. I'm just putting that forward for when I later tell you what I think.
Go for it. Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry. As you were.
All right. So then he says, "Nor is it divisible, since it is alike, and not at all more in any respect which would keep it from holding together, or at all inferior, but it is all full of what is. Therefore, it is all holding together, for what is draws near to what is, but motionless in the limits of great bonds. It is without starting or ceasing, since generation and perishing have wandered far, far away. True conviction repelled them." All right, so I think this first part is, nor is it divisible, since it is all alike. I think what he's trying to, what plain English words would sound like, is you can't have something that is partly made up of what is and what is not. Because
there are no half-truths.
Because there are no half-truths, right? And if it is divisible, well, that seems to mean that you can take away parts of what is, right? If you have...
which deprives it of itself.
Right, if you have a whole onion, right, and you cut it in half, then the one half of the onion, in some sense, is what is an onion and what is not an onion, right?
It both is and isn't onion.
Exactly. It's part of an onion. And so I think that's where he's coming from with the visible part of it. And it would make sense because then he follows it up by saying, therefore it is all holding together, for what is draws near to what is, but motionless in the limits of great bonds. It is without starting or ceasing, since generation and perishing have wandered far, far away. True conviction repelled them. So I think that's his kind of way of saying, repeating again a similar claim that
Sure.
if it can divide, then it can perish in some sense, right? And that, as he said, cannot happen.
Right. Okay. I wanted to bring in something as well from about is, right? What like because a lot of people might be thinking, well, what are you talking about when you say is? And I know we said we put that to the side.
We're talking about is, don't you know?
And
the verb to be.
There were 4 ways presented to us in the lecture. I'm looking at our lecture notes.
Thank you, Ina Kupreva.
Well remembered. So the 4 ways of thinking about is, there was existential, right? So like it exists, right? So this table is because it exists. Then there was predicative, predicative. So this chair is grey,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's another way of using is. This chair is something. Athen is happy. Well, not currently. But and then there's veridical, so which is something is true. It is the case that something is. So it is true that Athen is happy.
What was the one before vertical?
Predicative.
Predicative.
Struggle to say for some reason.
Which is, say it again.
So that's describing a predicate to something. So the chair, this object,
I see.
has the predicate of grey.
This surface is red.
Yes, yeah, it's a predicate of red.
So is saying that it has a property.
Yeah, X is something.
Got it.
Right? Yeah. And then the last one is of identity, right? So that was sort of equating, so X equals Y, right? So like, I can't think of what would be an example of that. How is that different from predicative? I asked this question.
What was the last one?
The last one was of identity.
So, to be something? Oh, let's try to go through
Yeah, carry on. Sorry,
with the example of this table is brown.
Mm-hmm.
So existential would be this table exists, right? So like that would be existential.
Yeah.
Predicative would be this table is here, like for it to be for it to have something, for it to have a property.
A property, yeah. So is brown, is hard, is he, I don't think here would not here. I think here would be existential.
Okay.
Maybe.
I was talking about more like location, not.
Oh, I see. Fair enough. So yeah, so this table is in this recording room.
Just a quick thing. Refrain from smacking the table because it registers with the mic.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I don't mind. Just
no,
the viewers might mind.
No, I just wanted to introduce those. I believe that the.
Let's continue. So veridical. How would we use veridical with the table example?
So veridical is truth.
Right.
So the table, it is. See, I'm going to use a predicate in a second. I don't want.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. But no, but I asked this question yesterday. I think I asked. What's the difference
it's if you think about logic, right? And so let's say the table is we assign A to that.
Mm-hmm.
For A to be true, I guess what does it mean for A to be true?
Right, but that's still not different from it being predicative in terms of is. Well, it's true. It's true that this chair is grey.
No, but I guess just like, what does it mean for this table to be something? I guess maybe it's what does it mean for this table to be something that can have a true or false value, or to have a true value.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. Like if it has all the if this table, right? This table has all the properties
that it has.
No, that Parmenides. I'm tempted to say Parmenides because that's a Greek way, but if it has all the properties that he says what is has, then it is true.
How's that different from existential?
Well, because existential is not concerned with true or false. It's just.
But then the table exists in all the ways that it exists. That Parmenides is saying that it exists. Sorry, I'm hitting the table again.
I have a really hard time with these two.
We don't have to focus on this so much. I just wanted to introduce them as possible ways of thinking about is.
Okay.
And we've been not good at giving examples for them.
Yeah, please tell us in the comments. You guys gotta leave comments. You know, just say hi.
Say hi.
Say hi, or bash us, or tell us we're great.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the first comment, please. Okay.
And any classmates of ours, if you're listening to this and you want to come and correct us,
Yeah, we'll be in this.
or you have your own insight into
Please.
how to think about this, by all means, come and join us.
All right. So next one. Remaining the same and in the same by itself, it lies. I'll put this so you can see it. It lies and so remains there fixed, for mighty necessity holds it in bonds of limit which holds it back on all sides. For this reason it is right for what is to be not incomplete. I don't know why he didn't just say complete, but whatever. For it is not lacking, otherwise what is would be in want of everything. So I think I'm going to repeat myself a lot, but I think this is a similar point to the last one we made, where if you have half an onion, then it's in some sense incomplete. It's not a full onion. You have parts of it that are not an onion, and that cannot be the case.
But the ancient Greeks had onions.
Well, I don't think that's like I agree that that's not what he's saying. I'm just trying to articulate
right
the point. I don't agree that he's referring to just like if you cut up an apple into 4 pieces, then you have a fourth of an apple, and
that's impossible.
That's impossible.
Right.
It's really a full apple, you know.
Right, but then what would he be? What's he describing? Because
I think he's making.
Because he would have been talking about, like, what he was experiencing. Like, he would have been trying to give an assessment of the world around him as he was interacting with it. And so, like, he would have had to have maybe cut up an onion once or twice.
I think he's talking about metaphysical laws.
I see.
That's my interpretation.
Fair enough.
I think he's saying,
you might be right,
that in some sense,
too material, too concrete with it, perhaps. Or?
Well, essentially, I think what he's saying is it can't be too. I think he's kind of introducing, in some sense, the theory of like incommensurability, which is essentially to say we can't have our like. I'll just say like a theory of like the moon, right? Or the sun. Oh, I know more about the sun and the moon, but we can't have, you know, something about the sun be that it is both orbiting the Earth and the Earth orbits it, or being orbited by the Earth.
Right, you can't have those two theories.
You can't have those two things. So what is, meaning some kind of law or law, yeah, because a theory is not complete. Let's say it's a theory. So for something to be a law, right, what is, or he probably didn't think of it as law, but kind of what is a governing property of our universe, of our world, etc., has to be something that is complete, holds, and exists. It did not come into being at a certain point, and cannot at some point no longer be the case. It has to be always the case. So at any given moment, it is only existing in the present.
Right. Okay. So you don't do anything to the onion when you cut it up. Like you're like the.
But I don't think he's talking about like oh, you can't. Like he would probably say in the case of an onion. I just don't think he's referring to like physical objects.
I see.
Let's say the existence of like physical objects. Like I don't think he's dumb enough to think that if I split this book in half and burned.
No, but that's why I'm pushing back against the example, because he's going to be giving an account of how to think of like because this this
Pushing
is
back on the example of the onion.
yeah.
I agree that I don't think that's what he's talking about. I just said that I don't think that's what he's talking about.
Right.
But I only brought up the onion to kind of put the lame, like I think when you first read this, because again we don't know what was inside his head. I think when you kind of
No, but this poem, right?
Yeah.
This is him giving an account of him going to the goddess in the underworld, wherever it was, and her giving him an account of two ways of thinking about the world,
right,
and saying that mortals, right, who think about stuff, right, think about stuff in this one way, and it's naff. Don't do that. There's
naff,
not good, bad.
Okay.
To be fair, maybe that's an English expression. Naff.
I think it is.
So not good. Like don't do that one. And then there's this other way of thinking about the world, right? And so like I agree with you. He's probably making sort of metaphysical claims about the structure and principles of the world, but that's also going to include that which is in it, such as onions, right? So like I'm like it's so I don't know. I'm just trying to think about fitting both of those into this description. Because I think I think they're going to be included in that because she's giving him an account of how mortals poorly think about that which is both in the world and not of the world. Does that make sense?
See, I'm inclined because he advocates not relying on the senses. Because
using reason. Yes.
And so that leads me to believe that he's not talking about just
experiential.
Right.
I see. It's thinking about. Okay. Fair enough. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's talking about laws that we can deduct.
Right. Yeah. Because he says use reason to think about the controversial claims I'm putting forward.
Right.
But not. That's not. So he's not. It's not empirical. It's not going to the world of experience. Okay. Fair enough. Take that back.
Right. So, I mean, that's my interpretation.
No, fair enough. I agree with you.
I wish you didn't agree with me, so then we could have more of a.
I can not agree with you.
Well, we'll consider all the. Okay, let's continue. Where were we? Yes. For this reason, it is no. Did we do the for this reason it is right for what is to be not incomplete, what is not lacking, otherwise we would want. Yes, I did do that. So what is to be thought of is the same as that on account of which the thought is. For not without what is, on which it depends, having been solemnly pronounced, will you find thinking, for nothing else either is or will be except what is, since precisely this is what fate shackled to be whole and motionless. Therefore it has been named all things that mortals, persuaded that they are real, have posited both to be generated and to perish, to be and not, and to change place and alter bright color. So I take him because when he says what is to be thought of is the same as that on account of which the thought is, I think we have to go outside of just the, if I'm thinking about this chair, then this chair must be is. Because I think that would be, that kind of thinking would lead us down the second path, the wrong path, right? Because if I, burned this chair, then my thought would be this chair is no longer. Right. So I just what I mean is I think we have to think about what he's saying is we have to think about it as being when I have a thought about what is, that thing is deductive. It's foundational. It's relying on logic and fundamental laws of the universe. We should not concern ourselves with things that, or we should not think about things that we can perceive by our senses as being is and is not. Does that make any sense?
We should not think about things that we can perceive with our senses as is and is not.
Right.
Right, because that would be a contradiction.
That would be a contradiction.
Right.
But our senses, if we just kind of thought empirically about the world, we would think that, because empirically it would seem obvious, it would seem strange to not think that this book right now is, but if I took out a match and burned it completely, then it would, in a future point, be is not.
And he's saying that's not possible. But again, we're back to empirical examples.
I think I don't think I think he would say you're thinking in the wrong frame. You're in the wrong.
So this is kind of like an early attempt at first principles reasoning, right? Like working from first principles, kind of like how like Descartes' meditation.
Like he I don't think he'd say, oh, necessarily that's I don't think he'd then say, oh no, you're wrong because the book really is and it's always been. I think he would say you're in the wrong route of thinking. You're not, we're in two different paths here, and they're incommensurable. One is I'm thinking about what I can see through my senses, and things come and they go, and the other is I'm thinking purely through logic and reason, and those things do not perish. They are always, the case.
Right. But you could say that about the book, even if you burnt it, because there would be there would be ash, right? There would be what remains of the book once having burnt it. So the book continues, right? It doesn't cease to exist, doesn't become nothing. But you're saying this is still in the wrong.
In my
yeah, of course.
Me.
Yeah.
Me interpreting. I think that is what he's saying.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I think it's too trivial of a claim to say you guys are idiots by thinking if I burn this book, then it's no longer there. Because actually you have all this ash, and you can,
Right, but I guess thinking in a contemporary paradigm, right? Like it's like the transference of energy, right? Like the state of energy it may dissipate and move or and change or go away, but it doesn't change.
But that's
right?
not that would be the energy, not the book, right?
Well, the book is energy, right? It's made up of particles that has.
But I think he would say, oh, that's something about, that's a law of thermodynamics. That energy,
But that's what is though.
That's what is
right.
The principle.
Mm-hmm.
But to say that the book I think when you're talking about the book, right? Because we perceive with our logic does not tell us, by just pure logic, we don't get to the point that the book is. That's something I know right now. I'm saying right now with my senses.
Mhm.
I see it, I feel it, I can hear the pages, mildly smell it. And then, right, if you asked me what are the properties of a book, or if I asked you what are the properties of what is a book, what would you tell me? Honestly, if I just asked you, if we went out there and asked a ton of people,
What is a book?
what is a book?
A collection of pages with writing on it, bound in a case.
Presumably it's something that you can read.
Yeah, that you can. Yeah, with digestible material inside.
Right, and those are all things that
Properties
come from senses.
Can't reason yourself to book is what you're saying.
Right. I mean, I think, yeah, I think in some sense he's telling us that we need to think about what is firm, what is a law, what is always the case. So, like, he may want us to describe this room in a completely different way than we would say just talking amongst ourselves. Like, this book sits on the table, the mic is on the table, the book is to the right of the computer. He'd say something about, I don't know, there's this amount of energy in these things, and or the atoms that are holding here. Like when you burn the book, what's really happening is the atoms are rearranging themselves. But they're still the same atoms, and they can't be unbroken.
Okay. Judge by reason the much contested examination spoken by me. So that's coming from the goddess. And she's giving a description of these ways of thinking about the world. And she's instructing him to use reason to think about her description. Now, is there a way that can be kind of copied, pasted, or transposed to using reason to think about empirical claims? Right? Like, use judged by reason the much contested examination spoken by me. So I give you an empirical description of this room or the book. Judged by reason, using your reason, think about.
But isn't if we like, doesn't it still rely on sensory perception
To give a description.
to give a description?
Yes.
And doesn't he say that essentially we should not think of use our senses to think about what is and what is not?
Do not let habit, rich in experience, compel you along this route to direct an aimless eye and an echoing ear and tongue, but judge by reason the much contested examination spoken by me.
I mean, experienced. I mean, it's in the underworld, right?
Right, yeah.
So that's kind of similar to like the Descartes locking himself in a dark room.
Yeah.
You know.
True. In that kind of destabilizing period of uncertainty.
Right, like maybe it's not an accident that he put himself. It's the god of the underworld who doesn't have any contact with the. You know.
Right, but she does say that it wasn't by evil deed that arrived you here. It was right and justice. So.
Right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the underworld isn't like it seems like it's not a bad place here in this particular
sounded
story.
Very nice, didn't it? Nice golden gates and chariots with music. It sounds not too bad.
So I mean, maybe the point is you kind of go into this underworld, And that's where you can get away from all your senses and using all your senses to think about things. And you can then think about things using the root of pure deduction or logic.
Right, because he's not in a place of experience. He's in the underworld.
He's in the underworld.
Okay. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Should we,
Yeah.
what time are we on?
We're like 1:15. I think what we should do is just finish, kind of get to the end of 1.8.
Yeah.
11.8.
Yeah, okay.
And then
Close it off, though.
do a brief, summary, and then we'll close it off.
Sure.
All right, where were we? Yes, change place and alter bright color. But since the limit is ultimate, it is complete from all directions, like the bulk of a well-rounded sphere, equally matched from the middle on all sides, for it is right for it to be not in any way greater or lesser than in another. What do you make of the bulk of a well-rounded sphere, equally matched from the middle on all sides, for it is right for it to be not in any way greater or lesser than in another? What do you make of that?
I'm not sure I make anything of it, if I'm perfectly honest with you.
I mean, is he just saying there that, it's perfectly positioned such that it can't be... Is he making, because a sphere is kind of like perfect in some sense, and it's equidistant from everything, so it can't be added or subtracted?
Yeah, I think he's just saying, this is going to sound really simple, but what is... It is what it is, right? It is complete from all directions. It says, but since the limit is ultimate, it, and then in brackets it says, namely what is complete from all directions. So what is complete in the way that it is. It's like perfect, maybe like the bulk of a well-rounded sphere. It's equally matched from the middle on all sides. So I don't know what to make of that, actually. For it is right for it to be not in any way greater or any lesser than in another. So things just are the way they are.
Right. Like
there's
laws,
there's no
principles, they just are.
Yes.
Do you think he could be talking about... I went back and forth between like metaphysical claims and he's like claims about like human nature. I don't think he's talking about like claims about... I want it to be claims about human nature, but I don't think that's what he's talking about.
Well, he's slagging off human nature a little bit, isn't he?
Well, I just mean like ethical claims, moral
I see.
claims,
I see.
like moral principles. But I think he's talking about metaphysical stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Well, because there's a lot of in the other I can't remember the names, but the other ancients we were looking at, there's a lot of cosmological claims, a lot of sort of ontological claims about how the solar system is constructed.
Right.
So I think he's probably following up that tradition.
Right.
But so yeah,
but it's interesting. Like the others, he doesn't really give a specific description of the universe.
No, he doesn't.
Which is interesting because maybe his reasoning for that is just by looking at it, and if I gave it a description, it would be based off of experience, which is wrong.
Not what he's talking about.
Not what he's talking about. Any description needs to be based off of...
Right, but if you're giving a description of something, it's positive, right? Because it has qualities that you're describing, so that comes into the category of is, right? It's what is not that you can't give a description of. So an empirical claim is a description of a thing and its properties. However accurate or inaccurate you are about it, it is a claim about what is, not a claim about what is not. So is he? This is what I was asking earlier about. Like, is he asking you to use reason to think about empirical claims, like to not simply just take what it is that is an experience at first hand, right? That's like, cause maybe the reason why he's not giving any cosmological description is because he to give a description of it, to just like the other guys did, like with the pipes and the sun comes through a hole in the pipe and the Earth is a flat column. He's saying.
Which, by the way, to go back to the flat column thing, just a quick comment. It's remarkable, though, even though in his thing the Earth is flat, the universe is a sphere.
Mm.
And then he kind of layers it. Like, it's not. If you think about it in terms of like, the heavens are just like way up in the sky, and the hell is like just beneath the rock to its core. Not a terrible description of the Earth, but anyway.
No, but that's my point, right? But you're giving an account.
But that wasn't him.
No. But he's following these other philosophers, right? Who have given a cosmology and a description of how the world works, however they give it, right? And maybe he's saying you can give your descriptions of what you experience empirically, but think about the claims, judge by reason the empirical claims. Don't merely rely on the empirical experience, because you'll be led astray, right? Because like what appears in experience, like we mess up sometimes, right? Like experience is very strange and fuzzy, and like those, you can run those experiments, right? Where you can have, or say there's a car accident, right? Or something happens suddenly, and you go and interview people about it, and then you ask 15 people about something that happened in the street, and you get 15 different descriptions of what happened.
Right.
So all 15 of those descriptions are empirical claims about what they had in their experience about what happened, and all of those cosmological descriptions are like based on their observation of, like the guy looks up at the sun and he sees a bright dot, and he says, there must be pipes going around the Earth, and there's a hole in the pipe, and that's the hole in the pipe is the sun is the hole in the pipe, and the fire from within the pipe coming outside of the pipe, right? That's an empirical claim, right? It's wrong, but it's an empirical claim, and Parmenides is saying, don't just take experience as it is, use your reason to think about it. And maybe that's why he hasn't given the description of the world, because he's critiquing previous descriptions of the world by saying this is the framework by which you should move forward and think about the world.
It seems like the common human way of thinking about it is to rely purely on the empirical senses, right?
Yep.
Etc.
Lived experience.
And the divine way of thinking about it is to purely, to use logic and reason to think about things. Now,
I don't know about divine, but because he's introducing it. He's introducing reason, right?
But from a goddess.
Yes, fair enough.
And so it could be.
So it's a claim about a superior method of reasoning. I mean, that's kind of the point.
Yeah, but it could be that he sees, like, to your point, that's kind of like one path we should abandon, and the other, and this could be the case. The divine path is like what we should all strive towards, but is maybe not possible for us to contemplate the world purely based on reason. So maybe he's saying,
well, I don't think. Sorry, Karen.
Maybe he's saying, we should we should, use reason to assess our empirical claims, but we're not capable of knowing as kind of humans who are not divine. We can't proceed purely on deductive reasoning. I don't.
Maybe, well, look, I don't think it's too ridiculous, because if you just think about what we are, right, is that we are human beings with a capacity for reason, right? We don't have an instinct for it,
Right.
Right? We don't have an instinct for reason. We don't all deduce our way through the day, right? You can discipline yourself, and you can. It's what we're here with philosophy students, for crying out loud. We're actually trying to discipline ourselves to use our capacity for reason in a constructive and productive way. But we don't have an instinct for it. It's why you have to come and study and train. And so maybe he's observing that for most people, right, that faculty isn't exercised, and so isn't implemented in the common person's thinking of the world. And he does seem to have a bee in his bonnet about that, and an air of superiority, because he's the one who's been taken to see the goddess, and she says, "Oh, you must know all things."
Yeah.
So it doesn't sound ridiculous to me, because given what we are, it makes sense.
I want to read this part.
Go for it.
So, she goes on to say, "For neither is the case that what is not, which would stop it from reaching the same, nor is there any way in which what is would be in one way more than what is, in another way less, since all is inviolable from all directions, and meets uniformity with limits." That seems along the lines of what we've kind of been talking about. But then it says, "At this point, I want you to know I end my reliable account and thought about truth. From here on, learn mortal opinions, listening to the deceitful order of my words. For they establish two forms to name in their judgments, of which it is not right to name one. In this they have gone astray, and they distinguish things opposite in body, and establish signs, apart from one another. For the one, the ethereal fire of flame, mild, very light, the same as itself in every direction, but not the same as the other. But the one in itself is opposite, a dark night, dense and heavy body. I declare to you all the ordering as it appears, so that no mortal judgment may ever overtake you."
Hence the superiority.
But is she commanding him then to say, go with what I've told you, but also live in your mortal world?
Listen to the deceitful order of my words. Deceitful? That's interesting. Why would you say that? For they establish two forms to name in their judgments, of which it is not right to name one. In this they have gone astray, and they distinguish things opposite in body, and establish signs apart from one another. Ethereal flame, fire and flame, mild, very light, the same as itself in every direction. It's back to the sphere, but not in the same as the other. But that other one in itself is opposite, dark night, a dense and heavy body. I declare to you all the ordering as it appears, so that no mortal judgment may ever overtake you. I don't know. It feels like she's. Yes, I think so. I think she's like. I don't know. He's gone to the underworld, had an interaction with this goddess. He's gone through a period of enlightenment.
Is this like in some sense going out of the cave, seeing what really is, and then instructing you to go back into the?
That's interesting.
Back into the.
Yeah, maybe
the cave.
Maybe. That no mortal judgment may ever overtake you, because once you've seen it.
Yeah.
Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Yeah, maybe, man. So, I do love that allegory, by the way.
Me too. We'll probably get to that.
Yeah, hopefully.
But is this kind of like, because is that kind of the point of saying, listen to the deceitful order of my words? Like, is that kind of like what I say?
She says something similar up here, right? When she says, judge by reason the much contested examination spoken by me, right? So she's saying, use your reason to think about this description of thinking?
Okay. I took it as
Okay.
what my mode of thinking is not common to the human world. And it's contrary to the way humans.
To the instinctive way, which would be through experience.
So, like, using my, way of thinking is going to make it difficult for you to exist easily in your human world. But do it anyway.
Difficult to exist.
Because if in everyday life, right, everything is using, the senses, and we're always relying on senses and empirical stuff, and then somebody tells you, stop using your senses, or like the true way of knowledge is to stop using your senses and to only rely on deductiveness, and then they go send you back out into the world of people only using their senses for things. It's going to be very difficult for you to exist in that world.
Well, I think it's to bring that manner of thinking into that world, right? Like, because.
But I'm saying the deceitful is just because she's like, this isn't like it's kind of like tricky, like it's gonna make life somewhat difficult for you because it's not because you're gonna
or it's an anticipation of the accusations one might receive, bringing such knowledge to other people, saying here is a better way of thinking than you are. He would be accused, as in Plato's cave, of deceit and of trickery.
I mean, maybe fortunately for Parmenides, that's really what he meant. Fortunately and unfortunately, people interpreted him to say something less intelligent, but more fitting with the times. So he was like safe, but at the same time given a short end of a stick in history. I don't know.
We had a good crack.
The kind of concluding, I think he's talking about, thinking in terms of like what, like metaphysical laws and think about, truths that are existent in the world and don't just rely on like.
Sure, right, because drawing a distinction between is and is not that's a metaphysical distinction, right? Because you're saying is not, right?
And I guess in the onion case, he would say like the onion doesn't actually exist. We just think it exists by our senses, but actually, it's really, a thing of atoms or a thing of energy or a thing of
maybe. Because it's not like there is not. It's not like the second route. So the second route, there is not. Like, because we've been talking about empirical and rational, right? And as if maybe the first route, which is reason, is rational, but it's not like the second one's empiricism, because there is no empiricism with is not, because there's nothing to describe. Right? So there are no empirical claims to be made in the.
Well, it is in the sense that if my perception of the book is this, and then it's gone, it burns, right? Then through my empirical experience, it will be no longer in the future. But remember, he says that things can't be no longer in the future if they are.
Yes, but you said that you think he's talking about form or principle or logos or logic,
right?
Not the concrete.
That's what I mean. I think that's what he's talking about when he says what is, is and what is not is not. Like, because deductive reasoning, the whole point of deductive reasoning is if the premises are true,
yes,
the conclusions
and the argument's valid,
it can't, no matter what changes empirically in the world, unless the premises are based off of empirical, facts, will always be true because it's true based on logic.
Yes.
Not on.
Yeah, the argument's valid and the premises are true, and the conclusion logically follows from the premises. The conclusion has to be true.
It has to be true.
Yes.
Right. And so that's so, and a law is something that, not in the sense of like, I give you a command to do this, pay your tax, blah, 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 but something that is,
Fundamental.
a divine law in the sense that it's always true. So I think what I think he's saying is think about those things. Well, not think like the world, the truth, the real truths are those things, and use that in your world to kind of.
Well, I think he's, because again, this is a poem, right? This is a,
Right.
and whether he's had this experience in a dream or by drinking some ergot that's got fucking weird fungus in it, makes you see stuff. Um, I think this will be coming out of him having thought about an improved way of thinking about the world. So while I agree with you, I think he's going to be, there's going to be an air of like transcendence of thinking about sort of higher order principles. I still think it's here is this method of thinking, rational thinking, right? And you've got the common person who is instinctive and reacting based on
Right.
what's coming into their experience. And he's gone and had this transcendent experience where he's had this realization that using your reason to think about, yes, higher order principles, but then also bringing that back to the world where people are responding instinctively based on empiricism, and using your capacity for reason to think about contested examinations. Right?
So what is ungenerated, imperishable, whole, unique, steadfast, and complete
Is.
So are you saying that you think that is, he's referring to like when he's describing things that have those properties, right, that can't be in the past and can't be in the future but in the present and can't be split up, those he's referring to like metaphysical properties. But it's also about taking together a new way of thinking about things that is not solely reliant on perceptual experience.
Because you can be led astray.
So it's kind of it's two things. One is the claim that what is just the metaphysical laws, but the root is the deductive thinking.
The root to those metaphysical laws.
Right, but the root is the deductive thinking. And so you can use that that is a tool that you should use in
thinking about experience
in the
and everything
mortal
else.
But in the mortal world, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so,
like simply, I think, just to put it really simply,
Yeah.
I think he's just introducing a way of thinking about stuff, right? That which is in the world, experience, whether we're wrong about it or not, reason, right? Deductive reasoning, using your rationale, is introducing this as a superior way of thinking about what is than the mere empirical.
So what is the is for you? Like, what is the thing that is ungenerated, imperishable, whole, unique, steadfast, and complete, that doesn't have a past or doesn't have a future?
Well, it would be, the way I'm thinking of it, and maybe I'm putting my contemporary framing on it, which is probably more than likely, is like that which is in itself outside of how we have an experience of it. Right, so there's our experience of the world, the empirical, right? That guy who saw the sun and thought, oh, there must be pipes and a hole in the pipe with fire in it, and that's the sun, right? But then there's the world itself, like that which is, right? The unperishable, the continuous, the that which is and it always is, right? And the way to think about what that is not through looking at it and just experiencing it and taking it at face value, but applying deductive reasoning to thinking about what your experiences is, or what actually, or what might be the case beyond your experience.
So you're saying that deductive reasoning is the is?
No.
So what is the is? Like what things are the is for you that are like ungenerated, imperishable, just whole, unique, steadfast?
Well, the things you're having experiences of, but there's a gap between you and that which you're having an experience of. So I'm having an experience.
It's kind of like forms for you.
Yes, yeah. Like there's, or maybe like the thing in itself.
So what you think based on your sensory perceptions of what an onion is not actually what an onion is.
Well, yeah, because so I'm having an experience of you right now.
Right.
Right, like I can see your brown hair, your like a light brown coat, the black string on your thing, your stubble on your face, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm having this experience of you.
Nice description.
Yeah, thanks. I'm having this experience of you through my flawed and limited senses, with my limited ability to represent what I'm experiencing, right? But I will not be experiencing you in all the ways in which you are. There will be a way in which you is, right? That I'm not having an experience of. I'm having an approximation. I'm having an experience of an approximation of you, right? So there's a distinction between as in what's in my visual field right now.
Right.
There's a distinction to be made between my experience of you and you as you are, and the same for you as me. So you're having an experience of me, however I look, right? But it's going to be, and I'm having an experience of me, right? So I'm still having it, like my hand doesn't look like this, right? I'm just experiencing my hand like this. My hand will be the way in which my hand is, but I'm having a limited and flawed experience of my hand.
So there's a higher order of...
Well, not necessarily higher order. I'm just like, there's an existential gap between me and reality. And reality is, and my experience of it is my experience of it, not reality.
I see. So the way for you to bridge that gap is deductive, is it?
Well, there's not. I don't think it's to bridge it. I think it's like it's
acknowledging that it's there.
Well, and to that I have a flawed experience of, say, you, and if I want to increase the accuracy of my representation, right, to use my capacity for reason to dispense with my biases and think more clearly about what it is I'm having an experience of, so that I can approximate it to a higher degree of accuracy. Though for me, there is that existential gap. I don't think it can be bridged, right? Will always be a gap between me and reality, even of myself, right? That can't be bridged, but you can increase the degree of accuracy or confidence that you have in your description of what it is you're having an experience of, and you arrive at that through your capacity for reason.
I think
but that's my perspective, not necessarily. That's just how I think about these things, and
that's kind of the little caveat of everything
of interpretation,
right? But I would say that I think we're not that far different in our opinions.
No,
because I think what you're describing is that like thing that is what it really is, right? That there's that gap between the way you experience it and what it really is. I guess what I interpret him as saying is that thing that you're saying, that what really is, it's the knowledge of that is only really achievable by pure deductive reasoning, or is only truly like the metaphysical laws that I'm talking about are, and that have these properties of ungenerated, imperishable, whole, unique, steadfast, and complete. Those things are, in my mind, what you are talking about, of what things really are.
Sure. Yeah. Fair enough.
And maybe the point where maybe we tend to disagree is you, from what I understand, might say that what things really are may like an onion. I keep on going back to that. I don't know why, but an onion.
As layers do.
And an onion may have something that is what makes up an onion that is different from our perceptual experience of an onion.
Mm-hmm.
And so he could still be talking about that. And I think for me, I guess he would say, and I'm leaning toward the side that he wouldn't even say that an onion exists. And that there's...
Well, an onion might not exist.
Are you saying that?
No, I'm just trying to riff on what you're saying.
Oh. Okay.
So you're leaning towards the side where he would say that an onion doesn't exist. It's just
But he's not concerned about the higher, the right thing of empirical things that we see, but rather he's concerned with like metaphysical laws in the world that govern all things.
Sure. But I mean, I guess so. But that would be included in my description of what is. So I'm not ejecting that or neglecting it from.
No. I just mean that you it seems, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're saying is that he would look at an onion
mm-hmm.
and say there's some higher thing of the onion that we're not able to see or experience, but that exists. And I think I would say that he would say, to hell, you guys think onions are real, but in reality there's something else governing this, and that is
onionness.
Well, I don't even know if he would I'm inclined to say he would be just throw out the term onionness and just think about he would say what really is there's these, like I said, metaphysical laws that govern everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be such that there is no object that we can perceive with our senses that really is those things.
Okay.
But I think
I can see that. I'm with you.
Those are maybe the two schools that we belong to.
Fair enough.
Anyway,
call it a day?
I think we should call it a day. Our listeners are probably bewildered right now.
Well, I don't know. I reckon they can. It's probably more exasperated than bewildered.
Yeah. Look, I enjoyed this. We have a tutorial.
There'll be 11 more of these.
Yeah. 10 more.
Oh, 10 more.
10 more. So buckle up and let's head to ancient Greece.
Let's.
Until next time.
Take care of yourself, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.